6 personal finance books. The latest personal finance book is Flipping a Switch, which deals with transitions that people make in later life. And as you heard, I'm a CFP, certified financial planner. And I'm not a geek, but I've always been really curious about technology. And I guess I've always been kind of an early adopter, whether it was social media or now in the case of AI. And pretty much every day that I'm working, I'm using AI for some aspect of my work. So I've gotten pretty good at it over the last 3 years. So, just in the way of breaking the ice here, if you will, I'm just curious how many of you are using AI? So you can put a yes or no in the chat. And if it's a yes, what platforms are you using, and how are you using AI? So, or if you want to just
That's
unmute, if
disabled.
that's easier, that we could do that too. So, anybody currently using AI?
Chat is
Okay.
disabled.
Um,
Yeah,
yes, but pretty limited. Okay.
I
Uh,
don't have the
that must
chat.
be Sharon.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Let me look into the chat if you're not able.
Okay. I mean, it popped up for me. I was able to see your post here.
Mm.
Try it now. I'm just adding that option. See if you can access the chat now. Your name
No.
does appear. Everyone.
Mhm.
To everyone. Still nothing?
No, mine still says disabled.
Oh, the thing is, mine's saying host and panelist, so I'm gonna.
Oh,
Is there an option for everyone, Sharon?
Yeah, I just clicked on everyone's name and clicked on
like
chat.
that.
Is that
It's in the security settings.
Yeah.
And then you have to
Um,
go into the chat.
well, let's not worry about the chat then. Anybody just want to
Mhm.
unmute and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with AI?
I use it once in a while, but I'm just not comfortable and familiar enough. That's why when I saw this seminar, I wanted to jump on it. I would like to
Okay,
use it more.
great. It's great though. Anybody else?
Hi,
Uh,
this is, oh,
oh, sorry.
nope, go ahead.
Yeah, so I use it not as frequently, but the primary way that I do use it is via Grammarly.
Hmm.
I have that built into all of everything that I do.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Kyle. And Trish, you had something?
I also use Grammarly, and Rutgers has approved Microsoft Copilot. I use Microsoft Copilot probably every day of the week. I often take what I have written, put it into Copilot for editing, and then I re-edit it um, to make sure that whatever Copilot has spit back out still makes sense and contains the essence of what I'm trying to say. So I use it to just enhance my writing. And also I'm a very descriptive writer, and that doesn't work in a lot of what I do. So I use it to sort of summarize a lot of what I have to put together. And we've also used it for Excel spreadsheets to um, clean up a spreadsheet and spit out some usable data.
Thanks for sharing. So it sounds like everybody on this webinar is at varying levels of experience, and that's great. Hopefully, I'll teach you a few new tricks of the trade during the time we have together. So, first of all, I wanted to mention that generative AI is not your first rodeo. We've been using AI probably for decades and maybe not even realize that it was AI. So, you're typing a Word document and it tries to tell you the next words to type. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. But if they're right, you just click the tab and, all those words have been typed out for you. And the same thing with texting. It tries to anticipate the next words that you'll be typing. So we've had that for a number of years. And then, of course, online searching by keywords or phrases that involves AI. Pop-up ads, if you've been on an online search for something, it's not surprising to see some ads that pop up for maybe a company that you were um, searching for. Shopping suggestions, same thing. If you bought a product, that vendor is likely to come back and want to market to you again and again. So that all involves AI as well, or making shopping suggestions. If you bought this, you'll probably like that sort of thing. And then, of course, I don't know how many of you have Alexa or other virtual assistants. Some people have smart home features that are AI enabled. And I just heard the yesterday on GMA that they're actually now having music that's totally AI. The songs themselves and even the so-called singers. And obviously there's a lot of controversy about that by the musicians that are out there. So AI's been around for a while in our lives. As far as ChatGPT goes, which is one of the most popular AI platforms. Uh, it took 5 days to reach 1 million users. I mean, compared to, like Netflix, it took 3.5 years. And it was the fastest platform ever to reach 100 million users. And they estimate that about 800 million people are weekly active users, and this is across the globe, not just in the United States. And another estimate is that 1 in 5 American workers are using ChatGPT in their work. So I want to stop and just share 2 articles that came out just this week in the Wall Street Journal. I was telling Sharon about them. This one was from last weekend, and the title of the article is Use AI or You're Fired. And it was pretty blunt. It really kind of said that, employers are looking for people to have AI expertise. And one of the quotes from that article was, at companies big and small, employees have feared being replaced by AI. The new threat is being replaced by someone who knows how to use AI. So I thought that was kind of telling. And then there was another article just yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that was talking about AI power users are impressing the bosses and getting ahead. And again, it just spoke to the importance of having the skill set to be able to use AI in your work, no matter where you work. So let me tell you a little bit about my AI experience. Generative AI and ChatGPT in particular was launched at the end of November in 2022. And I attended a webinar in February of 2023, and I was hooked. I became not the earliest of the adopters, but certainly an early adopter. So I've been using AI now since like I said, early 2023. And I thought I would just share what I've observed as a pretty active user. Back in 2023, I had to tell AI what I wanted. You still have to do that today. And you do that through prompts. And we'll talk about prompt engineering in just a little bit. But it was all kind of one way. I told the AI what it wanted, and it generated the response that I was looking for, sometimes after numerous attempts. And back in 2023, AI was not yet embedded into online search engines like Google and Bing. That didn't happen yet. So again, it was kind of in early stages. And there were frequent hallucinations. And a hallucination is the term that they use in the industry for faulty responses. So if you get a response that is not accurate, it's hallucination. And fast forward 2 years, and AI is now asking me what I want. Like I'll tell it to create something, and then it will come back to me and say, would you also like this? Would you also like that? It's kind of like an overactive overachiever. It just wants to please you and say, I can do this for you. I can do that for you. And came about, I don't know, about a year ago. All of a sudden, it became a two-way conversation. It wasn't just me telling ChatGPT, it was ChatGPT coming back to me and saying, can I do this for you? Can I do that for you? Also, nowadays, AI is embedded into the online search engines. So if you do a Google search on a topic, it's highly likely that you're going to see um, an AI response be the top search item. It's the first thing that's going to pop up. And then below the AI generated response will be all the links that you used to have in the past to kind of find things that you're looking for. So AI rises to the top. And that's actually been a problem for some of my colleagues in the financial planning, content creation arena, because what's happening now is that people are just stopping with the AI response. And these bloggers that have monetized their blogs with links to go to companies that pay them, some money if the link generates a response to the company, people aren't going that far. They're just taking the AI response and the references that are linked to the AI response, and they don't ever drill down any further the way we used to in the past. So hallucinations still occur. And a good example of that was the new tax law called OBA that was passed in July. There was just so much misinformation about OBA. I was trying to put together blog posts for clients, and um, I was trying to do webinar and get that all put together and podcasts for clients. And it was just so much conflicting information. So that was, a learning curve there for me. And then today, what's happened is that many entities, because of the hallucinations, many entities, companies, others as well, have created their own large language models. In other words, the big data set from which AI generates its responses. A number of organizations, including, I believe, the Extension Foundation, because I was on a webinar a couple years ago with some people from the Extension Foundation, and they were talking then about building a database entirely of research-based information from land-grant universities, so that when people used AI, they were getting, research-based content from which to draw the responses. So many organizations have done that. So they're not trusting all the polluted information that's out there. They're wanting to strain all their prompts to the information that they already have in hand. And I do that quite a bit. I've been blogging since 2017. I was about to take my sabbatical, and our dean at that time, Dean Goodman, told me that my proposal for my work during sabbatical wasn't rigorous enough. He's basically told me, if you want to take your sabbatical, you got to add some more deliverables. So I did. So one of the things I decided to do was to start a blog. So I did that back in 2017 when I was still at RCA. And I've had that blog now since today, present times. So over those years that I've had the blog, I've created a whole lot of research-based information that I fact checked, and then I know it's correct. So these days, I often will ask a prompt and constrain the ChatGPT to finding the answers from, and I just put in the link for my blog posts, all of it, my whole collection of blog posts since 2017. And then I know that the information is going to come back and that it'll be accurate. So that has happened quite a bit. I'm sure a lot of universities are doing that. I'm not sure about Rutgers. So this is just an example of AI suggested content. So I was doing a class a couple months ago a new class called how to communicate with how to search for and communicate with a financial advisor. And again, the AI was so eager to please me. So it said, "Can I create you a detailed list of all the things people should search for?" And I said, "Sure." And then eventually said, "Can I make this into a PDF file?" Of course. So again, the AI is coming back to the users now and suggesting additional ways that it can be helpful to you. And I kind of like this. It's helped me create a number of handouts for the classes that I teach here. I teach older adults about 25 classes a year, and I can create a handout for a class in, you know, 5 minutes or less just using the AI. So it's a very valuable tool. And then here's an example of AI use in an online search. So about 2 years ago, my brother passed away, and I was tasked with being the administrator of his estate. And I was just trying to do some searching about New York. It was in New York, and I just wanted to do some searching about, um, whether there were any commissions involved and fees and it gave me some answers to my questions. And what I really like about the Gemini searches, which are part of Google, is that not only do you get the answer, but you also get the source information from which it got the answer. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So AI can be much more productive than online searching. Again, you have to have good prompts, and we'll talk about that too. But think about it, with a Google search or a Bing search or whatever the search engine happens to be, you're not getting the answers to your question. You're getting resources that will help you find the answer to your question. So it still takes a lot of time to look at all the links that the Google search gives you and to click on them and to review them. And with AI, it will give you the answer, and there's no searching involved. And again, what I like about Gemini in particular is that next to the AI generated answer, you do get the sources so that you can verify everything that's there. So you don't want to have any hallucinations. So, how do you get started? Well, path one is it will pop up automatically. So you're already using a conventional search engine like Google or Bing. And like I said before, the AI generated content will likely pop up. And it's become the convention that they use this little star icon to indicate that it's an AI generated response. And like I said, also next to the response, you're likely to find the sources that it used to generate the answer. And of course, you can click on those sources to verify the accuracy for yourself. And what I really like about Google and Gemini in particular is that if you have a particular question that you ask and you click on the source, it will typically highlight in the source the section of the article that relates to the prompt or the query that you had. So again, it's all about saving time, just the productivity. And you all know, I lived that for 41 years when I was at Rutgers, is that, productivity is important. You have, especially if you're a county agent, because not only are you serving the needs of Rutgers, you're serving the needs of county commissioners and clientele, and there's only so many hours of the day. So if you can be more productive, that's a wonderful thing. The important thing is you have to have a detailed prompt, because if the prompts aren't good, the answers aren't going to be good. It'll just be garbage out. So the second method is to proactively go to a platform like ChatGPT, and I've given you the link in the slide, and create an account. So like anything else, you're going to need a username and a password. And then I don't know if you can see right on the bottom of the screen, there's a little field. It's kind of grayed out, but it says send a message. And that's where you type your prompt in. And those of you that have used AI, you know that it is lightning fast. It's going to take maybe 5 seconds for a result. The only time I tend to get longer is math problems because I've been working this past year. I've had this really big project to recreate an entire curriculum in personal finance for high school students and college students. And it includes a lot of math. And and I wanted to create examples, with math examples of different things. And then sometimes it will say, waiting, I'm thinking. And instead of taking 5 minutes, it's 5 seconds, it might take 10 or 15 seconds because it had to kind of think through the answer. But it's very, very fast as far as the response that you get. So, prompt engineering, let's talk about that. So, that's the term that's used for what you put in that field that gets the AI operating to do whatever it is that you want it to do. So the important thing to remember is that the more detailed your request is, the closer the response will be to what you're looking for. But it's not at all unusual to have to go back and forth with the AI, maybe three, four, 5 times, actually just refining it, taking what it's given you and say, can you do this instead? Or can you add more detail? Or whatever it is that you need to get the response that you want. So they call that having a conversation. And sometimes I guess I take that a little too seriously. I actually, say please and thank you and just talk like you're talking to a person and again you're trying to go back and forth with the AI. And again, like I said before, it's not unusual these days that the AI will come back to you and say, this is what I can do. Would you like this? And you need to be very specific. Number of words. So, for example, this curriculum that I've been working on, I had to have a glossary. So, for each unit, there were terms that needed definitions for them. So, of course, I used AI. I would say to it, please define, and I would put the term and I found out about 16 words or less was about the sweet spot for what I needed for the project. And it would give me 16 words or less as a definition because I didn't want 30 words. I needed to have something that would fit a clearly defined space in that curriculum. You can tell it a reading level, or you could tell it something like to a 4-year-old, to an 8-year-old, to a high schooler, whatever it is. So those of you in 4-H that are working with young adults, you probably want to keep it kind of simple, and you can tell it the reading level that you want, the number of words, even the emotional tone with certain words like please respond with an empathetic voice. Um, Things like that. You can do that. The amount of detail. Do you want 200 words? Do you want, 1,200 words? Whatever it is. If you want bullet points, do you want detailed bullet points? If I say detailed bullet points, I will say detailed bullet points with 4 or 5 sentences per bullet. I mean, you just got to be really literal with what you want. And again, source material, if I want to constrain the source material to something that I developed or something else that's coming from a land grant university or a reputable source, you point the AI to that source. So let me give you an example with a basic prompt and a better prompt. A basic prompt might be, what are ETFs? That's an investment prompt. There could be a whole lot of things out there that have the acronym ETF. It may not be the investment ETF. So you're likely to get a mishmash of who knows what, because it's just too basic. But if you say, how would you explain ETFs, exchange traded funds, so it knows that you're talking about the investment product, to a layman, which means it wants to be simple, and can you provide 3 examples for me to understand? A whole lot more detail. Or another example, create a plan for a 3-day trip to Paris. Well, there's also a Paris, Texas, in addition to Paris, France. So that could be confusing for the AI as well. So a much better prompt, a very detailed one, create a full plan for 3 days in Paris, France for travelers, including a hotel under $500 a night and places to meet for every meal for people who are gluten free. I mean, you can get as detailed as that, and you're going to get a much better response because you've put into the prompt everything that you're looking for. So, as I mentioned before, some people are creating their own large language models from reputable data. So, I would encourage you to think about that. You know, what are the sources of information in your field? And it seemed like most of you were in the ag and natural resources, and we have the equine center and the environmental stewards. I bet that all of those fields have databases or websites or some other source of to be correct and research-based information. You can just direct the AI to those data sources and know that you're going to get factual research-based information. I told you that's what I do with my blog posts. So let's talk about professional uses of AI. What could you do with it? Well, some teachers, this slide actually came from a webinar that I was on that was with teachers. So some of the things that they suggested, it was kind of a chat thing that they saved, was asking learners to find inaccuracies. So in other words, you take advantage of a hallucination and you know the information is incorrect and you turn it into an assignment to have people find all the incorrect information. You can create question and answer quizzes on topics. You can create questions for a topic or for a publication or talking points. You know, maybe you have a debate going on where let's say 4-Hers, thinking of Sharon there. Maybe you want to do one of those, counterpoint to point and counterpoint kind of things where people argue both sides. And you could create talking points for each side that people could use. You can change the reading level of an article if you had to do that or create book and article summaries. Maybe you don't have time to necessarily read a whole book, but you want to get a good synopsis of it. You can have AI help with that. Or do fun things like songs and poems about the topic of your choice. So, my world is personal finance, and some of my colleagues have created some very interesting songs and poems about personal finance. Rubrics. It can do a real good job of creating rubrics. Again, if you're detailed with the prompt, you could use rubrics for grading, for awards, for publications, whatever and writing recommendation letters for colleagues or students. And one of the ways that you would do that, particularly for colleagues, is to direct the AI to the information about the colleague. So it has, information that's about that person. And then you're not sending it out to the big wide internet. You're just sending it to the person's CV and again giving some prompts about what you're looking for. So those are some professional uses. I personally have written several letters for colleagues for their awards, and it's taken me probably about 15 minutes or less. Because I don't take it verbatim, of course. It's a space to begin on. But how many times have we spent hours writing, colleague recommendation letters? It doesn't have to take that long. So importantly, though, you need to follow workplace guidelines. I haven't really delved into this because I'm not using AI at Rutgers anymore. I don't work for Rutgers. Actually, technically, I do until the end of the year, but the work that I've done for Rutgers doesn't involve AI. But you should be aware of the policy. Just like I can remember maybe 15 years ago when social media was brand new. Rutgers also had policies for social media. So just be familiar with the policy that Rutgers has put together because that's kind of your guidance for how to use it professionally. Um, some of my clients these days actually hire me to be co-authors of journal articles. And so I've gotten pretty familiar with what journals are expecting authors to do with respect to AI. So most journals that I know, at least in the personal finance field, are requiring authors to explicitly state if and how AI tools were used, and whether it was used to prepare a manuscript, analyze data, generate text or images, whatever it is. There probably will be a requirement. So it's important to check the guidelines for the journal and see what they are recommending or requiring, actually, people to do with respect to AI. So here's an example here. The authors use ChatGPT to refine grammar in the discussion section. All content was reviewed and verified by the authors. So it doesn't have to be a long section, but you want to address it. Typically, people I've seen put an acknowledgement of AI either in an acknowledgement section or they include it in the methodology section. And maybe they have a subsection under the methodology that talks about AI use or methods or something like that. Most publishers are not yet requiring full verbatim disclosure of the prompts. This has been heavily discussed in academia, and many people have raised intellectual property concerns that if you give away the entire prompt, it's kind of like you're losing some of your intellectual property, all that time that you spent to refine that prompt. So most of the time, publishers are just requiring the disclosure that AI was used. But again, you'd have to check the guidelines because each journal is different. I don't know if anybody's run into that where they want to have the entire prompt. Um, okay, really important. Don't produce work slop. So work slop is the term that's out there for low quality AI output. So again, it could be full of hallucinations, for example, or it could just be poorly written. And work slop is an indication of poor professionalism. I mean, it's just like making typos, grammar errors, poor sentence construction. It just doesn't reflect well on the creator. So if you're the person that's producing the work slop, it's not a good thing. And the other thing to think about is work slop. And maybe you've had work slop over the years working with colleagues, and you say, why couldn't they have fixed this up? And this is terrible. And you spend so much time rewriting. Well, that's what happens with work slop. Whoever gets that work, it's more work for them to have to try to correct it or fix it. So basically, you're going to aggravate your clients or your colleagues with an output that's not stellar, that's not up to par. So again, an indication that you want to review and edit everything. Okay, I think I'll stop here and see if there's any questions so far, and then I'm going to get into some examples of how I've used ChatGPT in the past and how you can too. Any particular questions? You can just unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Barbara, I'll just mention that as you were sharing some examples, I was thinking exactly, I did a recommendation for someone's college application. I didn't know her well, and so I wanted to be honest and yet, not too fluffy. So I did go to AI for some ideas. I know my husband writes a lot of letters for his students as well, and has that template and, goes to AI at times to fill in some of the gaps. So
Hmm.
good
Okay, great.
reminder, some easy ways to help us out, I guess.
Okay. Okay, so you want to avoid work slop. So let's move on and talk about some examples of ways that you can use AI that taken from my experience. So one of the first things I did professionally with AI in early 2023 is I was doing a webinar for one of my clients on mutual funds. And so at the end of every webinar, they have a continuing education quiz that people have to pass. They have to get 8 out of 10 questions correct. And so my first version of the quiz was awful because I didn't have it constrained to any particular database. I just kind of went out into the worldwide large learning module and asked for quiz questions, and they were terrible. So then I thought to myself, maybe I should just constrain it to a cooperative extension publication on mutual funds from extension.org. And that's exactly what I did. And the questions were so much better. And also, what I did in the prompt, you might see that there, it says 4 responses of approximately equal length for each question. Because that's something that you learn in psychometrics, that you don't want to have the correct answer be the longest answer because it's kind of a tip off. So you want to have all your answers be approximately the same length. And it was just a much better quiz for a project that I was working on. Another one that's kind of fun is I wrote a book in 2020 on late transitions in later life. And I asked it to write a book review, and it's so-so. And then I changed one word. I said, write a positive book review. And I got this glowing recommendation for my book. So just just to point out that one word that you add to the prompt can make a big difference in the output. So kind of an important lesson. Here's another one. You remember Robin Bromfield? I think she's a member of ESP, and she left Rutgers a couple years ago and retired. And all through my time at Rutgers, I was the person in the various departments that I was in that used to write the retirement poems when people had retirement parties. And it used to take me, an hour, maybe a little longer, because I would have to get the person's CV and I'd try to have to comb through the CV and try to pick out words that rhymed. And it was like a major chore. Well, I got Robin's party poem, even though I was down here in Florida. The department reached out to me and said, "Can you write a poem for Robin?" So all I did was go to the information about Robin that was on the Rutgers website, uh, and lo and behold, in less than 5 minutes, I had a poem from for Robin that they read at her party back in New Jersey. So again, even things like that take a lot of time, you can really simplify the time needed to do them. And then my husband turned 75 a year ago. So I wrote a poem for him for his birthday. So it can be fun poems, things like for friends or, um, family members, things like that. Here's another example where I was creating a new class called Managing Your Digital Financial Life. And I asked it to make, please make, I always am very polite with my ChatGPT. So please make a detailed outline of topics to include in a 60-minute class called Managing Your Digital Financial Life. And it gave me a pretty good list. I've done other outlines for classes where I also tell it in the prompt to give me time allocations, 10 minutes for this part, 10 minutes for that part, that kind of thing. So you get a pretty detailed outline. It's good for just brainstorming and thinking about, okay, what kind of content do I want to include in this class? And then here's another one. I was teaching another class on spring cleaning your finances, and I just wanted to get a simple definition of spring cleaning. So again, I went to ChatGPT and, gave me a definition. I put that in one of the slides for my class just to introduce the topic. Um, Here's another example. I was doing a class on CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. And I was in the class, I was talking about um, all the different factors that people need to consider if they decide to move into a CCRC. And again, it came back to me and said, would you like a checklist of all those factors? And I said, sure. And again, it created me a handout that I was able to use. And it took like, you know, seconds to create this handout. And the other example on the right side of the slide, I had another class on selecting a financial advisor. And again, the same thing. It created a checklist that I could give to my students with all the things that people should consider to hire an advisor. So again, just lots of different ways to increase your productivity. I certainly wish I had ChatGPT when I was working for Rutgers. Um, would have been even more productive. Here's a fun thing. Maybe you want to do some trip planning. So let's say you want to come down to my hometown of Ocala, Florida. We are the home, by the way, of the World Equestrian Center. So something to think about, Kyle, if you ever come down to the World Equestrian Center. It's 10 minutes from my house. Wonderful place to go for people into equine. But I digress. So anyway, if you wanted to plan a 1 day vacation in Ocala, Florida, including breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 5 free activities. Okay, so I teach that a lot in my classes about people trying to cope with inflation. And if you can't take a long vacation, you can do a daycation. So this is like a perfect summary of what you could do in the course of a day, eating your way through Ocala, Florida, and doing part of some activities that you choose to do. So you could do that for your own hometown and see what it pops up for your neck of the woods. Maybe meal planning. Gone are the days where you have to have a cook. Maybe you've just got a bunch of ingredients at your house and you want to put something together for a quick dinner. So ask ChatGPT for a recipe and state what you want to have in it, and lo and behold, you'll get a recipe that will give you all the ingredients and all the instructions. Some other ways that you can use AI is, let's say there's a topic in your field that you want to explain simply to your clientele without all the jargon that sometimes we slip into as experts in our field. You could ask ChatGPT to explain a complex topic in simple words. You can help have study help for students. So, quizzes and text prep, maybe that would come in handy for some of the quiz bowls that 4-H has, for example, to create questions for that. Some people use it for practicing a new language, trying to learn words. Speeches, toasts, party planning ideas. Maybe you want some motivational quotes or affirmations that you can kind of recite. Trivia game questions. That's big down here in Florida where I live in my 55 plus community. They're always having trivia games, and you can come up with some questions for that. Movie and book summaries, home exercise routines. I mean, there's really no limit to what you can ask AI to produce for you. But let's talk about some downsides. The downside, it does make mistakes. I've already mentioned the term hallucinations, and sometimes the hallucinations sound like they have to be right. They sound very authoritative, and all of a sudden you find out it's not right. It's totally wrong. So you need to be careful about that. Output from ChatGPT or any other AI platform should always be considered a first draft and never just take it and run with it, because then you've got the workflow. You want to review it carefully and add your own tweaking to it and make it your own. But it certainly will start you out with some information that you can build on. Okay, graphics. I noticed Steve mentioned that he was playing around with some graphics. This is kind of interesting, and I guess I should preface this by saying that I've only used the free versions of AI. I've never upgraded and paid any money to use it. So, my community where I live, we're having a holiday party next week, and we decided to call it Thank Masika because we're kind of hitting Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Hanukkah all with one party, right? So I just asked the AI, well, first I asked it to create an image with Santa Claus and a turkey. And that was all AI generated there, a little image. And then I decided, I said, oh, wait a minute, I got to get the Hanukkah in there too. So then I asked it to create that. And I could never get the AI to have the 9 candles that the menorah is supposed to have. And I even told it, I said the menorah should have 9 candles, taller candle in the middle and 4 shorter candles to the left of the center and the right of the center candle. I mean, I gave it as much of a detailed prompt as I could and still couldn't get the menorah right. And then I played around with it some more. I had, again, Santa with the turkey and first I had, like 7 candles and I got it up to 8 candles. And finally I just gave up. I was trying to put a flyer together for this program that we're having, the dinner that we're having. I just took clip art from another place and put 9 candles on because I felt it was more important to reflect the menorah correctly than to, struggle with the AI. Again, I was using the free version. I might have had better luck if I, had upgraded. And then you need to be careful of some of the ethical issues, things like cheating, exams, jobs, research articles. Again, just people need to disclose their use of AI. And I know a lot of the university professors in my field, they're trying to create exams, particularly with online courses where they're not there to monitor students that can't be cheated on with AI, things that are personal reflection kind of questions that, AI can't create your answer. There are concerns about intellectual property. Um, Impersonations is a big issue, text, voice, and graphics. And there's also the issue of photos with FAUX instead of PHOTO. And those are just fake photos. And I guess a good example of that was uh, Pope Francis in the white bubble coat. That was one of the earliest fake photos that came out. And there's also a concern about fraud because, particularly with voices now, people can be tricked into thinking that somebody's in trouble, for example, the grandparent scam. So you need to be careful about that. So just to wrap up, what's next? Well, I always advise people when you're trying to do something new is start small. So some of you have already been tinkering with AI, some of you maybe have not. So the first thing to do is simply think about what would you like AI to do for you? And then write an AI prompt. And again, think about what you want to do. Do you want to answer a question, plan a trip, research a topic, write a poem, other professional uses that I mentioned? Decide what you want to use it for. And then the next thing is just tinker and play. And I mean, I think that's pretty much what we did with social media when that came on the scene. And some of that tinkering and play is going to be on our own time because, extension people are very busy and we're just doing our jobs. It's hard to say, oh, I need an hour a day to play on AI. You may not have that. You're probably going to have to do some of that stuff at home. That's where you can do some of the fun things with AI. So just play around with it, tinker with it, try to have back and forth conversations with the AI, telling you exactly what you want and giving it feedback on what it gives you so it can give you what you really want the second round. Refine your prompts, keep adding words and details to get what you want. What I've done is once I get the content that's usable, I cut it and paste it out of the AI and put it into a Word document so I have it saved for future use. And then, of course, like I said before, following the institutional rules that Rutgers has put out for faculty and staff. So I think I'll leave it there. And thank you for the time that you spent with me today. I hope it was helpful. And I'll just open it up and see if there are any questions that I can answer. Feel free to unmute.
Hi, Barbara. I just wanted to say thank you very much. I think I've heard you speak about this in the past, which has gotten me to where I am now. and you always provide such great insight and reassurances, and I really appreciate it. I do have
Oh,
to
thank
jump
you.
off. You're very welcome. I do have to jump off. I have a 3 o'clock. Again, thank you very much.
Okay, well, we're set to end at 3 anyway, but thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah. So, Barbara, I love that you reminded us to follow the AI guidelines that are set by Rutgers. So, I did post in the chat the link to Rutgers. It's
Mm,
under Information Technology, Artificial Intelligence at Rutgers, and there's AI guidance, and there's a whole Rutgers initiative as well. So, AI literacy offers the LinkedIn learning courses, things like that. So, these are additional tools that I know I need to spend time reviewing and learning more about.
okay, thanks. Yeah, I see that in the chat. Yeah. Anybody else?
I'd
Okay,
just like
well,
to echo thank you also. Sorry.
it's okay.
I didn't realize I actually use it more than I thought I did, not
Hmm.
to a lot of the extents that you did, but and then just how to create or compose a question for it and such like that in more detail. I think is going to help me out a lot as well. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we have your contact information, so if anyone has any further questions, can certainly reach out to you. Thank you again, Barbara. And, I guess I wasn't surprised when you had put in your proposal for the webinars that I knew Barbara's always a little ahead of the game than some of us. So we appreciate you sharing your knowledge and, of course, your experiences in kind of working through and using, really this new opportunity for everyone. So.
Okay, well, have fun playing around.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And like we said, we'll post this and send an email. Barbara, I don't know if you feel you would like to send an evaluation out to our participants today, but you can always let me know or send a link. I don't know if you feel like you
That's not
need.
necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. Why make more